Welcome to American Dreams. My guest today is Kasia Flanagan. Kasia, welcome to today's show.
Thanks, Alan. It's great to be here.
So, before founding Everyday Legacies, you worked as a professional historian and writer. And how did that shape your approach to personal storytelling?
Yeah. So in my work as a professional historian, believe it or not, my research specialty was German history in the South Pacific. So I worked with mainly German Tongan descendants and German Samoan descendants. And I did that during my PhD. I did it all through my undergrad and then through my PhD. And then I did it as a professional historian after writing a book about German history in Samoa. And what was interesting to me as I was working with these individuals was how much their family stories and really what they knew about their family stories, how much that impacted their lives in every real measurable way, right? Like their identity, how they conceived of their identity as a mixed race individual in whichever country they were living in, whichever environment they were living in. And that it affected their success in their lives. So there was like um, a measurable connection between how well they knew their family stories and how successful they were in their profession or in their lives in some way. So I just found that really interesting. And that kind of led into, understanding more the importance of personal storytelling, especially within a family. And that kind of eventually led me to what I'm doing now.
Kasia, what inspired you to start Everyday Legacies? Was there a defining moment or personal story that sparked that idea?
Yeah, well, I would say it's more a series of stories. So, I mean, growing up, I've always been interested in people's stories. When I was growing up, my favorite books and still are autobiographies and biographies. I love to ask my parents and my grandparents questions about their lives. And I found that they had direct application to me with knowing where I came from and who I was and kind of what was expected of me. But then, as I mentioned in my PhD program, as I saw the direct influence family stories had on individuals, it became more and more important to me. I remember you asked about a defining moment, and I remember this one time I was working on the family line of, if you're familiar with Tonga at all, which for those who aren't familiar, it's a tiny island in the South Pacific near Samoa and Fiji, north of New Zealand. And I was working on this family line for a family called the Wolfgrams. And the Wolfgrams are actually some of the earliest Tongans to ever immigrate to the US. So one of them, his name was Johanni Wolfgram. And he came to the US, I believe, in the 1960s. And the thing about Johanni was he was a very, I would say, visionary man and a very faithful man. And he had this idea that he was going to he was going to move to the US and be able to provide better for his family. You know, there was a lot of reasons he wanted to come to the US. Well, and he was the father of, I want to say 14 children. He might have had 18 children, a very, very large family. And so, of course, with that, had a lot of responsibility as a father. When they moved to the US, he sold everything he had to get to the US. And, um, getting here, he moved to Utah in the Northwest US, and he had his family there and had to work extremely hard to provide for them. And he had all these, hopes and expectations for them. I remember working on his story, reading his book, what record his family had created for him about his life, for their family to have a family history of sorts of him. And I remember just thinking about it and how incredible he was, and walking home from school one day, I mean, from the university, and just thinking, man, you know, if only his grandchildren and his great grandchildren really knew this guy and really understood where they came from, the difference that would make in their lives. Because, of course, there's all sorts of issues in the world that we live in today, gangs and, things that arise, people joining these, sort of clubs or gangs or groups because of a challenge with identity. And you especially see it like in my research with mixed race. So I just had this feeling if they only really knew where they came from, how powerful that would be. So that was a defining moment. I had some others that kind of just pointed me in this direction of helping families and not only helping them record their stories, which is what we do at Everyday Legacies, but it's also helping them understand the value because so often we're thinking of, I know, Alan, you work a lot on legacy, and legacy is not just your money, it's not just your financial capital that you leave to your family. It's not just the wing in the hospital that's named after you. It's who you are as a person. It's the influence that you've had on those closest to you and what they contribute to the world because of what they learned from you and how important that is to record just the same as we record or as we preserve our financial capital, we have to preserve that qualitative non-financial side. And that's really what I try to help people understand through my own research and then through the research of others in in psychology and family studies and all of that all comes together and tells the importance of family stories.
I love that. In essence, who you are is reflected within your values. And I love what you're doing in when you're putting together your everyday legacies of bringing out the values that people possess in their life. Um, when we talk about what role you have for your own family stories, um, how do values get developed? And I'm curious because you've done this many, many, many times with many people. But when you're reflecting on values, it seems to me, and I'm just kind of speculating that values are an evolving process. Uh, when we apply a value system, for example, to your own personal journey, how have those values helped in reflecting the stories and bringing out the values in other people?
So you mean about of my family or families that I
Right,
work with?
right. Let's start with your personal values, and then going into how does reflecting on how your values were developed come out as you interview and talk to the other
Yeah.
individuals.
So it's really incredible how much our families shape us. And there's a lot of debate about family and what that means and what family, who constitutes an actual family. And I wish that everyone had this kind of ideal family. And that's not the case. So really your family, I mean, it really is the people that you descend from and that you grow up with, kind of that nurture environment that you grow up with. Thinking about my own, I had the privilege of growing up, or the good fortune of growing up with my grandparents in close proximity, at least my maternal grandparents. And then I also knew my maternal great grandmother. And these people shaped my life in a very real way. And I absorbed the lessons that they taught, not only through things that they told me and, any lecturing they might have done, which my family really wasn't big on lecturing, but so I learned a lot from observation. But I also learned from their stories. My mom would tell these stories about my grandfather that there's this one story. My grandfather was a dairy farmer and he raised 10 children, well, 8 children, two of them passed away, but he raised 8 children on the lava rock of Southeast Idaho, which if you've been there, which I know, Alan, some of your children went to college out there. I mean, it's really, to me, it's a miracle that people survived out there and that they had these flourishing farms. But my grandparents were some of them, and it took a lot of work. And I remember the story my mom used to tell about my grandfather that he made a deal with some man to purchase something for an X amount of price. And later on that day, the same day, I think, he found something. I mean, it was hundreds of dollars less. And money matter. Money still matters. And so hundreds of dollars, he could have easily gone back to that guy and said, sorry, I found a better deal. But because he had shook on that and his integrity was important to him, he said, I'm going to honor that first commitment and I'm going to purchase that, even though it's really, a lot more than this other deal that I found. And growing up with stories like that, I mean, it's a family story, but to me, that spoke of not only my grandfather's integrity, but really set an example for who I wanted to be and what I wanted to be known for because I want to have stories told like that of me, right? I want my kids to be able to say, "Mom lived with integrity, and this is why." And I remembered this story. And the thing is, it goes both ways because sometimes we have examples in our family that we don't want to be like. And we hear those stories and we think, I never wanna be like that person. I never wanna do those things, and that's the thing. Family stories are also valuable in that way because just as they can instill values and teach us lessons, they're also helpful to show us a path, right? Either the path that we wanna go or not, and that's why it's so important that everyone tells their story, because otherwise there are gaps, and those gaps can be filled with speculation or maybe someone else's memories. But the real power comes from knowing the whole truth. As much as memories are subjective, but there are truth. And once we know that, we can really make our own decisions about who we want to be. And that's based on this context that we understand from our wider family tree.
Why should someone write a history of their life? I mean, when everything's said and done, there's lots of things they can be doing in their own life with their time, but why is the history important?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, Ellen. It kind of goes back to what I mentioned about the qualitative capital, understanding that we don't just have one capital in our lives. It's not just about our money, right? And we work so hard for that, and we're trying to provide a good life for our family. But really, that's the tip of the iceberg, because everything under the surface, again, is our relationships, our connections to our family, the memories that we make, the traditions that we establish, the values that we instill. And so the thing is, if you don't take time to record those things, I mean, I hear all the time people will say, well, my kids already know everything. They already grew up with me, they know everything. We really truly, we take for granted how much people know and how much people are going to remember. So the thing is, it's like giving someone $20 versus giving them a bank account that has, or a trust that has money in it that's going to help them in perpetuity. That money can be spent easily, that money that you just hand them versus the money that you preserve for them and this plan that you set in place. So again, it's thinking of our qualitative assets in the same way that we think of our quantitative assets. And it's preserving them in this way that's going to benefit your posterity long into the future, way after you're gone, when they're going to look back and they're going to say, who am I like? Who do I look like? Who do I sound like? I mean, there are things, and I could go on for hours, but there are things in my own family that I learned only as an adult, which gave me this sense of belonging that I had missed for a long time because I learned something about my grandma, or I learned something about, this aunt that, like, oh, well, that's like me. But unless those stories are preserved and told, you miss the opportunity to influence your family with them.
So how do you help clients discover what they want included in their project?
Well, it starts with obviously a consultation. I want to understand who they are and what's important to them. And with that, it's understanding who are they leaving their legacy for? Who are their heirs? And the thing is that might not be children. I mean, sometimes people think, well, I don't have to worry about that because I don't have kids or I'm the last one in my family. I've heard that a lot. And the thing is, it really doesn't matter. It's really for the people close to you. So that could be children, grandchildren in most cases, that is, but it can also be your colleagues or the people that you've worked with as you've built your business. You see this a lot of times in succession planning, how important storytelling becomes within a business, because you need to understand the foundation of the business and then the vision for the future. You can think of it the same way for a family, because really a family is succeeding from generation to generation, just the same as a family enterprise would. So I sit down and try to understand, who is this for? What is the objective that we're aiming for? And then, using my historian brain, we work backwards from that point. What are the questions that we need to ask? There's sort of standard questions that are important. There's three things that we always, always, always will include. And that's the history, that's the ups and downs kind of stories, the journey stories. A lot of times we learn a lot more from the lows in our life than we do from the highs. But when newspapers write stories about us, or when somebody, I've even worked with people that they've already had books written about them, but it's kind of about the highs, it's the highlights. And really what your family is going to relate to is more the human, very, the low light aspects, the very human kinds of experiences you've been through. So we work on that. And then we also record the voice. So I tell people, you need to leave your family something digital, yourself on video, and at the very least, an audio recording, just expressing your love and telling them how much you love them. Um, I had this experience. I was speaking to an entrepreneur group a few years ago, and this woman shared that her dad had taken the last couple years of his life, and he wrote a book about his life and his experiences and his story. It was 300 pages when he finished. And I said, wow, that's amazing that you have that from your dad. And she said, yes, but the 300 pages was mostly the story of his business and his spiritual life and it only included 1 or 2 lines about me and my siblings, and we're all pissed about it. That's what she said. And I just remember thinking, how sad. It would have been great for this man to have a personal historian working with him to say, hey, this is great, all of this information that you've included, but now let's talk about the heart. And that's a lot of what we do is, we're working a lot of times with entrepreneurs, business people, and it's so easy to get stuck in that storytelling brain of, well, this is my business, this is what I went through. But we also have to turn it on, turn it a little bit, twist it a little bit and say, let's talk about your family. What are your feelings for that? What was your memory of, you know, learning that you were going to become a father or a mother and holding that baby in your arms for the first time? Because when your child reads your story, they're going to be looking for themselves. So a lot of our job is making sure that we are including those important elements that are really going to be the most powerful impacts on future generations. It's not only about recording your story, it's about recording those things that are most powerfully going to influence, recording the actual capital that are most powerfully going to influence your future generations.
So, who is your target client?
You know, we work with mainly within so Everyday Legacies is a bespoke personal history company. We do projects mainly for entrepreneurs, high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals. It's a very white glove kind of service. We're with them from start to finish. And the idea is that we take the burden, 95% of the work we take on ourselves so that they can just tell their story and then have it done. They don't have to worry about the writing. They don't have to worry about the editing. They don't have to worry about the design or printing. We take care of all of that. So it really lifts that. And then they can have that peace of mind knowing that if anything happens to them, their story is there for their family and then to bless them in the future. Um, but with that, that's my target audience, I would say, and the people that we work with. But this message is for everyone. It's applicable to every individual at any socioeconomic level, anywhere in the world. Every person needs to record their story. These principles apply to everybody.
Oftentimes legacy products are not at the top of a person's mind while they still have their parents and grandparents. It's only once that they're gone that we wish that we had made a film or asked one question that we're curious about. How do you help people understand the importance of investing and preserving memories now rather than waiting until it's too late?
Oh, Alan, can I share a painful personal experience with regards to that? My mom passed away suddenly last year, April last year, and she was 58 years old. None of us expected her to go, and it's been so hard since she's gone. I'm so thankful because the year before she passed away, we actually wrote my company, we wrote a family history for my mom's side of the family. And with that, we helped each of the siblings, including my mom, write their personal history. So I have about 10 pages that my mom wrote. And the thing is, it's funny going back to we always think we know you think your kids know a lot about you and they do, but there's a lot that they don't know. And I learned things from and I'm the second oldest in my family. So I would say of all my siblings, I probably know the most because I'm the most interested. I ask the most questions. It was amazing because I still learned from just those written pages. But Alan, I wish that I have had the presence of mind to also say, hey, mom, while we're doing this, would you open your phone and just make a video for each of us kids, just at this point in your life, to just say, hey, I love you. This is what I want you to know. These are special memories that I have with you. Because how important that is when that parent is gone. So I've learned from that. And I try to, be an evangelical about that message with people. I just say, it's not about thinking, okay, I'm going to wait till the end of my life to do this. It's about using the time you have now. So a lot of times, I mean, we're just busy, right? And we're focused on, there's two things, right? There's important and there's urgent. And a lot of times we're giving our focus to what's urgent because that's, we need to work on those things. We need to attack them. We need to get them done because they're urgent. And a lot of times we understand how important this work is, but we don't understand how urgent it is until sometimes it's too late. And that's what I hear a lot from my clients. They say the only criticism, if you will, that I've ever heard is, I wish we had done this earlier. I wish we had done this sooner. So my advice to people is, hey, as soon as this hits your radar, do it because you can always add to it. And honestly, it's wonderful to have time capsules, right? Like you had something that you made at 50 years old and then 60 and then 70, or even every 5 years or even shorter intervals than that. That's wonderful. But to not have anything is a complete travesty.
Is there a personal story in your life that helps to emphasize how important the mission you have of bringing out the stories of others is?
Yeah. I'm really glad you asked that question, Alan. There's a story that I always go back to emphasize how important this work is and how it influences each of us as humans in a very real way. I had an experience. So I grew up with a very challenging background. Both my parents struggled with mental illnesses, and my dad, never could hold down a job and um, was very violent and aggressive. And eventually, my parents divorced when I was 15. Our lives were very tumultuous. We were homeless twice. I missed a couple of years of high school. And, by the time I got to college, which I really only got into college by the grace of God, I loved what I was learning. I loved progressing in education, but I was crippled by imposter syndrome. And it became especially bad when I got accepted to my PhD program. I was accepted to the University of Auckland in New Zealand. I was doing my research there about mixed race German Tongan descendants. And it was a wonderful opportunity for me, but I was thousands of miles from family. I didn't know anyone in the country. I knew two people. And I just had this overwhelming sense that I didn't belong. And someone was going to find out and they were going to kick me out. And I worried that I wouldn't be able to finish and that I would disappoint everyone who believed in me and helped me get there. And there was this experience that I had with family history that helped me to overcome that and to continue. And this is what happened. It was early in my program. It was a Monday morning. And I came into my office. I was a shared office space with other PhD students and just felt completely overwhelmed. No one else, it was early enough. No one else was in the office yet. And as I got there, I just was overcome with these feelings of discouragement and doubt. And I put my head down on my desk and, was just thinking, can I really do this? And what if I can't? And what if I disappoint everyone? And what if I get kicked out? And all these what ifs, right? And what if the best I can do is working at Walmart the rest of my life? That personal story behind that, but that was my worst fear. And as I was sitting there in those feelings, I had what for me was really a very spiritual experience, this vision, if you will. I had my head down, and all of a sudden, I saw my mom's face come into my mind. And I thought about her. Of course, I'm thousands and thousands of miles away from her. And I just thought about what I had learned from her and the incredible woman that she was, the strength and the character that she had, and to get through the difficult things that I had seen her experience in my life. Then after my mom, I saw my grandma, and same thing. I thought, wow, my grandma, she was the one I said that helped my grandfather pull this farm and this family out of the lava rocks and raised good children. And how did she do that? How did she overcome those things that she faced? Then right behind my grandma, I saw my great grandma, who I mentioned I grew up knowing. And the same thing, she was a teacher in a one-room schoolhouse in rural Montana. And she raised her family in a cabin without electricity or running water and, raised good kids and had this family. And as I saw these women in my mind, what it did for me, I just had this feeling, if they could do it, maybe I can too. Maybe I can face what I'm facing and overcome these challenges because they did in their life. Another thought, because I could do that maybe because their strength is in me. Their story is part of my story. And then thirdly, that I owed it to them to try because everything I have in my life is a result of those people who came before me and the examples and the stool that I stand on because they built it. So just this feeling that I owed it to them. And it was incredibly powerful for me, Alan, because it changed my mind about who I was and what I was doing. It wasn't about me. It was about the legacy that had been left to me and doing the best that I could with the circumstances that I had. And I know that that's applicable to all of us. We may not think that our story is important, but really it's not about us. It's about the people that we influence. It's about our family in the future. And you really can't place the value on your story. You just have to understand that it is important and you do have a responsibility to preserve it, to share it, and then to preserve it so your family has that for the future.
So, for a person wanting more information on the experience of everyday legacies, where would they find that?
You can go to our website. It's just everydaylegacies.com. You can reach out to me personally through the website, through our office system there, or I'm on LinkedIn as well, Kasia Flanagan. And I'm always happy to talk about these things and meet people around the world.
Okay, just thank you for being on today's show. You're doing a remarkable thing in your business model for this world.
Thanks so much, Alan. It's great to be with you today.